Hello and welcome to the Sol y Luna Inspirations. Today we're going to be talking about the Gemini New Moon with Martin Comtois, wonderful astrologer and Jungian dream analysis.
And my co-pilot, Dayana Robinson. Wow, so nice to be doing this. And the channel is like, the last two videos, we got 2,000 views and then 1,000 views. And in these last two videos, we got 110 new subscribers. That means 110 of you are new to the channel. We want to welcome you. Please share our videos and please continue to comment. We got so many comments. Continue to like the videos. Keep massaging the algorithms. We are growing. It's exciting.
We're grateful. Thank you.
Yes, super grateful. And today we're doing a video on two things. We're doing the new moon in Gemini and the summer solstice.
Should we look at that right now?
Yep. So the Gemini new moon and the summer solstice, reflection, intention, and manifestation. So what does that mean? Reflection, intention, and manifestation. Are you getting off?
Reflection, intention, manifestation.
So this is usually during new moons. It's a time of reflection. What is reflection? Reflection is, we call it resourcing sometime too. So when we're reflecting, we are mirroring back ourselves. When we have a journaling practice, we mirror back ourselves to ourselves. We kind of do basically self-analysis. We're reflecting. We're going back to the source. We're consulting with God. We're reflecting ourselves. We're looking at where we are. So this time of reflection usually leads to inspiration or being inspired. And in the inspired mean in spirit. So by that reflection, seeing ourself, our spirit in the mirror, then we become inspired, and then we set intention. Intention is like a prayer. We say, this is what I want to do. So new moons are like that, and solstices are like that. So we're coming 3 days apart. We have the new moon and the summer solstice. And so then this is a time of reflection and intention that will lead to action and manifestation. And so this is the cycle, how we create our life, or how we, through intention and through reflection, we encourage manifestation. It's really a spiritual process. It's what happens when we pray. It's what happens when we do just about anything, when we are reflecting and checking in. I call it checking in my orders, like you were talking about Pluto. We've been in the service of Pluto, so we checking in, we're reflecting. That light of Pluto is reflecting on our lives. Does that make any sense?
It does, yeah, for sure. I also see it like you're sharing this, it's like, how do I say this, to commune with spirit, or to, I had this perfect word and I forget now, but when you reflect on, co-create with spirit. When you allow time to reflect, then it's allowing your spirit and spirit itself to come through. Then you're manifesting a life that is co-creating spirit, versus trying to maybe lead by only the head and drive, and then life will often give you side swipes if you're needing to go another path.
Well, if you use this process, this reflection, intention, and manifestation, this is really how you create magic or synchronicity. You align yourself through reflection with the higher law, the higher plan, and then you become inspired by that, and you set your intention, you pray for this outcome, and then manifestation follows action. And so that's basically the recipe. And we align these concepts with astrological concepts. So we have the new moon, we use that for reflection. And as the moon grows, we become inspired and we set an intention. And then the manifestation comes at the full moon, and then the integration of it all. So that's why astrology is so valuable for us. It gets us to be in tune with the cycles of nature. And speaking of cycle of nature, the summer solstice is a very important time of the year. This is really the two most important time of the year astrologically is the summer solstice and the winter solstice. So that means that the sun has moved as far north as it can come. On the summer solstice, we are the longest day in the northern hemisphere, the shortest day in the southern hemisphere. So the shortest night in the summer solstice. And then now the sun is moving the other way. It's going back down, moving, and it's going to take 6 months to go to the winter solstice. And so these are very important shifts, and they require this reflection and intention. So very, very valuable time. So today we're going to do both charts and see what we get out of that. Did that feel right to you?
That was a great explanation. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the Gemini new moon. So when we look at the Gemini new moon, you want to put that full screen?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay, cool. So the Gemini new moon, what does that tell you right off the bat? Gemini new moon.
The sun and the moon are saying hi together in Gemini, and it's the beginning of a new lunar cycle.
Absolutely, but it also says, oh,
Busy.
Mercury rules the show.
Yeah.
And Mercury happens to be in Gemini, so Mercury rules this chart. Every planet is disposited by Mercury, which means basically that the trickster is really active, and this is a very highly communicative moon. So we see the sun and the moon there in Gemini and Mercury down lower. Now the sun and the moon only make one angle to Neptune, square in Pisces. So that very active communication, engagement, trickster-like behavior, very Neptunian, it's like, let's dissolve the boundaries that keep us separated. And so this is a very mystical new moon. So I call it Midsummer Night Dreamy. It's very it has this flavor of being really dreamy.
I could see that being maybe tricky for the Gemini or the Mercury aspects because it wants to talk things through. And to me, when I think of Neptune, I think of it's hard to put words to something.
Well, when they talk about Mercury in Pisces or Mercury in angle to Neptune, it's one who's really got a hard time communicating. Or that communicates. Well, I have Mercury in Pisces myself, Sun in Pisces and Venus in Pisces. I kind of, it's kind of not so much an intuitive, although there's that intuitive, it's also kind of like feeling the vibe, and so this Mercury, this sun moon in square the Neptune is very hard to define, and Neptune, is famous for not wanting to incarnate, to want to stay in the mystical world. So a really good time to escape reality, but also a really good time to talk to the angels, and so a really good time for reflection as well.
Yeah, reflection, I could see being a great use of that Mercury dynamic.
And then we have Mars, Venus as the evening stars. Both, they won't conjunct yet, although Venus is moving rapidly towards Mars. As they move out of Leo, Mars will move into Virgo, and then Venus will slow right down, station retrograde. And so then Venus will be in Leo for about a month and a half. And so what happens with that Venus Mars conjunction, it will conjunct later on this year, almost around Christmas time. But with Venus and Mars, they're the first stars you'll see when the sun sets. And I was trying to look for them the other day there, and you could see Venus so bright that it was showing up when the sky is still blue, blue.
I saw
And
that.
she saw with the moon there, and then you add Mars there, and so very powerful time to witness Venus and Mars. And you see, right, that line, the ascendant line. The ascendant line means that everything below that line is at nighttime. Everything above that line is at daytime. So Venus and Mars are the only planets in daytime after the moon. So as the sun sets, we'll see in the brightness of day Venus and Mars, and they'll follow the sun and the moon and set and follow. And so that's very interesting as well. So what does a Venus-Mars conjunction feel like to you?
Venus and Mars together, conjunction. When I look at Venus a lot, is like our more feminine energy, and Mars is more masculine, so like a harmonious union. And I've seen a lot of charts with it together, and I see like almost like a ability to act in their strongly in their feminine and their masculine, and people who also have just a lot of drive in general.
In Greek mythology, Venus was married to Epictetus, I think, who was the architect, but she of the gods, was crippled because he was thrown off of heaven and crashed to earth and broke all his bones. And anyway, he had to make himself a chair. Anyway, that's the husband of Venus, but Venus had an affair with Mars.
Oh, is Mars her brother?
Uh,
I mean, in
technically,
mythology, it
yes.
doesn't matter, but-
Technically, yes, but that doesn't stop the gods from having relations. And then Eros, Cupid, was born out of that relationship.
Oh,
So then Venus, Mars is associated with relationship, and in Leo, so they're, that's, quite an amazing time for romance. And with that Leo, but hey, we didn't pick our card. Whoop.
should we pull a card, two cards, or what is the card for?
Not just
New
card,
moon?
just for this reading.
Okay, for these days of great shifting.
Yeah.
Aw, again? No, I'm kidding. 9.
Oh, that's the 9 of Swords. Interesting.
Huh.
We
So
did the
maybe I said
10
it-
of Swords last time. Interesting. Complex times, isn't it? So let's
Almost completion.
let's look at the chart, and especially when we look at the solstice chart. But let's finish on today's chart, on the new
we're-
moon chart.
Wrapping that one up here.
Mercury is the chart ruler, and one of the main factors also with this new moon is that Saturn is turning retrograde. So Saturn came into Pisces, he goes all the way into 7 degrees of Pisces, and then will turn retrograde and will go all the way back to 0. That means if you have any planets between 7 and 0 degree of Pisces, you've already experienced the first pass of Saturn. You will experience a second pass, and then which is so there's the first pass is, oh, something's happening. um Second pass is, oh, that's what's happening. And when it moves direct again and moves the third time, then that's the integration phase. And so, anybody who's got any planets at the beginning mutable signs, that's Pisces, Sagittarius, Gemini, and Leo, Virgo, sorry. These if you have planets in any of the mutable signs between 0 and 7 degrees, you're experiencing a Saturn transit. Saturn transit demand that you come up to your highest potential, whatever planet. So I have my sun at 2 degrees Pisces, and then I have a sun. Anyway, this is complex, but I have a sun at 2 degrees. My sun is at 2 degrees of Pisces. So Saturn's here, and then I have Pluto at 2 degrees, so in direct opposition to the sun. Then I have Jupiter at 2 degrees Sagittarius, and I have Mars at 3 degrees Gemini, forming a natal grand cross, and Saturn's triggering all 4 planets 3 times in the course of this year. So having to learn to deal with Saturn, and Saturn is not very social. It's like I feel like I'm a recluse. I do these videos, and then I write and I garden. Oh, speaking of gardening, these are my what do you call those again?
Dahlia?
No, these are peonies from my garden. I love peonies. So blah blah blah. That's Saturn turning retrograde. So what else is important about this new moon?
Oh, look what that did to me. Spoke to the Venus-Mars conjunction, the new moon aspect, and the ruler.
That Mars Venus makes angle to Mercury, to Uranus, to Jupiter, and to Chiron. So really, by far, that Venus Mars above the chart there is what we're really gonna see. And and then with that Sun, Moon, Neptune, so that seems to be a very propitious chart for falling in love. And so be careful, have really good boundaries, and don't get too carried away, because you could find yourself in an interesting situation. And so let's look at the solstice chart. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Do you think here, like you were talking earlier about the potential for escapism with this Neptune influence on the new moon, but then we have this creative force? What about applying yourself to your relationships, whether that's spirit or your loved ones, in a creative way to maybe stay a bit more grounded and not do the escapism route?
Well,
but you can also always
the Venus Mars, and the need for relationship, and the Eros, the Cupid. And I have another kind of sentence for Neptune. I call it the urge to merge. So the urge to merge in Pisces, in square to that moon. So then the urge to merge into another, so then really both of those things make it quite propitious.
Well, have fun with the loves in your life. And then summer solstice.
The summer solstice. So that's a whole new ball game.
So this will be 4 days later. 3 days later?
The 21st at 7:58 a.m. What's very fascinating about that is that the moon is joining Venus and Mars. And that Venus and Mars and the moon are all in opposition to Pluto and in T-squared Jupiter. And the solstice chart, you want to go off screen? I mean, back to the thing about a solstice chart. Remember we said about the 6 months that that is the journey of the sun back to the south. So when you do a solstice chart, that chart read in a horary fashion becomes the predictive chart of what the next 6 months is going to look like. So then with Mars, Venus, and Moon in the first house, so whatever relationship gets struck around the new moon, chances are that it will last. Because that Mars, Venus, Moon conjunction is in Leo in the first house. So that's our personality, and it makes a direct opposition to Pluto. So it's going to be intense. And Jupiter, it's going to be, we explored, all of this incredible Jupiter, Pluto, Venus, T-square. And then we had the Mars, Pluto, Jupiter, T-square. And now we have Venus, Mars, Moon, Pluto, Jupiter, and Jupiter's in conjunct with the North Node, so forming kind of a grand cross with the South Node. So there's a lot of destiny in this, and whatever happens at the solstice, it sets the flavor for the next 6 months. So, so in that sense, the 9 of sword and waking up from a nightmare, it can, my sense is that the socio-political energies are going to be very intense, as they have been. We got some very interesting planetary alignments building over the course of the next 6 months. We'll be looking at the triad of transformation, which is Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto forming this triangle there. And we're going to be talking a lot about that. They're just starting to get an alignment. We saw it last year, and we'll see it for about 4 or 5 months this year as well. And that's going to be an aspect that's going to mature in 2025. So something is afoot, you can feel, that we're all going really fast and there's a lot going on, but there's another current, Actually, last night I woke up from a nightmare. I was thinking of the collective situation and, how we're allowing so much immigration to come into Canada, which is making our livelihood impossible because we can't find places to live. We can't, the economic pressures, the cost of living. There's so much competition for everything, and this is this aggressive stance, and that will keep building as they bring in 500,000 new members to this country every year. So, we're on a pace there where, lodging and medical and all of these things, very, very complex time. So it's, and so with Pluto in angle to that, Venus, Mars, so that relationship, and then the moon, and then Pluto, and in horary astrology, it's all about the moon. We haven't even talked about the sun yet. We're focusing on the moon. How does that feel?
Like it's gonna potentially be a lot, but also like it's gonna feel like there's gonna be like a window that opens, if that makes sense. Like I see a window of like, oh, this is where be focusing or what's here to stay and where it's needing attention next.
Well, I think that the inspiration, Jupiter, comes from our relationships, the people that are close to us, I think that the people that show up in your life at this time, in the principle of relationships, these are the people, not just romantic relationship, but also any kind of relationship. Eros is the concept of relationship. Yes, we could call it Cupid, but in Greek philosophy, eros is the feminine principle of relationships, versus logos, which is rational thinking. And so really, I think more and more the people that are in our lives are the ones that help us stay sane through this craziness. So making commitments to people, I think is going to be really important.
And maybe using like that Leo is like to be honoring and courageous and truthful to yourself. So making sure that those relationships are helping you stay sane. And if they're not, there may be some powerful Plutonian energy making you have to separate from them or come to terms with the truth of the relationship.
Absolutely. Early next year, Venus and Mars will come and conjoin Pluto in Aquarius. So whatever's starting right now, there's going to be the quarter, and then there's going to be this conjunction of Venus.
And the quarter is going to be weird because it's going to be back in Capricorn by that time.
I think we got a little, but yes, because it takes about 6 months. Yeah, so it will be back in Aquarius in early 2024, and then that's going to take that long for Venus to come, and then Mars will come a little bit later. So, astrology is all about cycles, and so we get to learn cycle. But let's look at that chart a little more. It's a deep dive. So reflection, so there's like a lot to reflect upon, intention, manifestation. And then what's interesting about this chart is both the sun and the moon make angle to Pluto.
Oh, yeah.
And the quincunx, that green line there, it's really thick. It's exact. Sun is at 0° Cancer, and Pluto's at 0° Aquarius, or very close to it. What is Pluto at? 2948. 2948. So, 12 minutes off of, so that's like an exact Pluto quincunx. Quincunx are difficult. Quincunx are integrational alignments. They happen in the same, in conflicted elements, a feminine element and a masculine element, and they require that we learn to integrate the masculine and feminine polarities of those energies. And so quincunx are challenging. And then the moon's opposite Pluto, and the sun also goes to Neptune and to Pluto. So then that, quest for redemption and the urge to merge, and Pluto, and the sun also goes to Saturn and Pisces, and we've talked a lot about Saturn and Pisces. So the solar energy is challenged by collectives, or a masculine, or need to shine our light into the world is challenged by the Neptunian and Plutonian energy. And Saturn and Pisces, you got to make sure you have a really good boat that doesn't take water, so we talked about that, the need to have a really good sense of self with Saturn and Pisces, which is a complex set of energy. Blah, 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 blah. That's a lot, huh?
Yeah.
And we have also Chiron in the 10th house, also making angle to that sun, at moon, Mars, Venus, and Chiron in the 10th. This is about, manifesting
Healing
the
work.
inner shaman, the quest for healing the wounded healer. And then also Jupiter's in the 10th house as well, making that T-square to Pluto and the moon. So I think that this is with Jupiter and Pluto in square being active throughout this whole time. Jupiter will be moving retrograde again and will still be an angle for the square to Pluto throughout the next 6 months, 4 months anyway. So we're going to be feeling that for a while. And so that sets the tone for this coming 6 months.
So we're back to another fixed T-square.
Another fixed T-square. Yes, fixed T-squares are going to be, yeah. We're going to be experiencing that. And so it's kind of immovable, but it's also super manifesting. It's like, wow. So that's why, taking this new moon and this equinox, solstice, sorry, as a time of reflection. It's the urge is to go out there and be really social, and to find this urge to merge into another being, but really just making sure that you focus on your soul and that you develop really strong discipline, because then you can use these next 6 months to create a new reality, which will be realized at the winter solstice. And then I think that in my own process, the summer solstice and the winter solstice, I do a retreat and really give myself time for focusing on intention, on reflection, and on creating a new manifestation. So these are magical times. Take advantage of them. What do you think about all of that?
I think it's exciting. I definitely feel like I hear destiny calling as big things that came forward for me. And I find it neat that this card has come, because I feel like there could be some maybe like rude awakenings, or like waking up from a nightmare and needing to redirect life where it needs to be. So that's the reflection piece, is when we reflect, sometimes we realize that we've been acting maybe not in integrity, or not how we want, or not manifesting the things we want. And so that reflection piece to help you kind of wake up from your own little nightmare you may or may not have put yourself in, or that reality can be at times, to then set new intention to manifest what you do want to be living in.
I think the reality of it, I mean, I've been around since I was born in 59, so that's, a bit of perspective, and I don't, you have a shorter perspective. Definitely. But in my reasonably long life, I've never really seen it this bad. This is the worst that are the tension, the psychological tensions, the amount of breakdowns, the amount of psychological and spiritual challenge and pressure and tension people are under. It's never been this intense. And so, yeah, we can look at the next 6 months, but really practically we can look at the last 6 months and the last few years. This is insane. Really, something's got to give. And all of that tension is forcing us to change. And this process, reflection, intention, manifestation, you want to recreate yourself, take some time to reflect on what you want to become. Set your intention, do the work. This is the time. If you don't, it could be troublesome. Well, it already is. Do you feel that way? I mean, with your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, there's been points in life where I subjectively felt like things were a lot more chaotic, but I've also done a lot of work trying to make a life that is fulfilling for me, and also loving and supportive for those around me. So I feel like constantly like stop, reflect, pivot, stop, reflect, pivot. So there's that constantly happening in life, but on a bigger global scale. I don't know. I think I'm from a generation where it was like there's always the next big thing. It's like it was Y2K and it was 9/11 and it was 2012. There's always the next big disaster happening, and I think it's just what I've signed up for this life.
Well, you were born when, with Uranus and Neptune in conjunction, so there's a technological and spiritual revolution. But if you, and that's why it's so important to look at this Pluto, Neptune, Uranus triad of transformation that's building in the sky, and that completes in that matures in 2025 and goes to about 2028. That, so what I meant is, I lived through the 60s and then the 80s and then the 90s and then the 2000. It's like we've been in constant crisis through the whole time, but there's an ebb and a flow to that crisis. But this last crisis that we've been through during also a Uranus Pluto square, very similar to the 1960s. Anyway, what the astrology of it all gives us is the perspective. And so, you get the sense that these are very, very important time in our collective evolution. And your generation are coming of age, and are being called to great things. And this is the time, if we're going to do something great, using these next 2 or 3 years to do something great, this is our chance. Let's do it.
Cool. Love it.
Wow, we have been quite active in this one. We still have the dates to go through.
Right. Oh gosh. No farewell quite yet. Thanks for sticking with us this long. Here's a few dates you may want to put in your calendar. So on June 12th, Mercury ingresses into Gemini.
So then Mercury becomes really important because it's in the planet that it rules. Then we talked about Saturn turning retrograde on the new moon, and then the new moon on the 17th. Then on the 19th, Venus begins its shadow period. What does that mean? Venus begins its shadow period.
Venus beginning its shadow period means it's going over the territory that it will come back to in the next month or two as it goes retrograde, right?
So from 12 degrees to 26 degrees.
28, 26?
28. 12 to 28. If you have any planets in that spectrum, you're going to get 3 passes of Venus over whatever planet resides there.
Yeah.
And that's true with all of the fixed signs. So Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus. So Venus will make 3 squares to Uranus during that time, which will be very interesting. We'll look at that, and we'll do a whole video on Venus retrograde. I actually have a really cool little thing called the Venus Project that I'm going to incite you to participate with, because it's a Venus retrograde happens every 2 years, and it's a very important time for us to connect with our soul. So we'll talk about that.
Stay tuned. That's exciting to come. So aside from Venus going into its shadow period, right after the new moon, then on the solstice, a couple days later, is going to be June 21st, which is when the sun goes into Cancer. And then jumping a bit farther, July 3rd, Capricorn's full moon is going to be at 11 degrees. We'll do a video on that. Stay tuned for that. That'll be in a couple weeks.
The 12th, Mars ingress into Virgo, and on the 23rd, Venus stations retrograde at 28. So these are the main events, and stay tuned with all of that. We usually put all of these dates in the text box accompanying the video. So if you want to look at those dates and copy and paste them so you can keep track of them. Also the charts. Well, I don't post the charts, but I post all of these notes there, because I haven't figured out how to post the charts in the comment section. But if you want those charts, if you want anything, you just email us. We're really friendly, really. And we like it when you engage, and that massages the algorithms and help us grow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to talk about Gemini.
Yeah, just come back around. If you saw the last video, you'll probably give me a refresher. But we are in Gemini season right now, and will be until solstice. Busy go time. And so important to be mindful of our body and stay grounded within our body, to stay present. So Gemini rules the shoulders, the arms, and the peripheral nervous system. It's communication chair, right? It's ruled by Mercury. And so this is the part of our body that's constantly taking in feedback information from the outside world, the nervous system, especially the peripheral nervous system. And so the tissue salt, kali-mur, which is associated, potassium chloride, is the part that is carrying the information back into the body. So it picks up information about it being cold or hot, or liking the texture of clothing, or needing to take old damaged cells from the tips of your extremities and your fingers. And that all comes into your lymphatic system. And so lymphatic system can get heavy and a little sluggish if that's too much work. So this tissue salt, kali-mur, helps to support that. Helps if there's debris building up in the eyelids, if you're seeing swollen glands, earaches, liver gets sluggish, constipation, swelling in the hands and the feet, even things like canker sores. So this could be a really supportive tissue salt if you're feeling a sluggish slowdown in the body. And then because Gemini is so busy on our nervous system, there's also herbs that can really help to tone and support the nervous system during this highly stimulating time of year. Skullcap, passion flower, lily of the valley, flax, parsley, and calamus. So flax being really high in those omega fatty acids that help to coat our nervous system. And then skullcap, passion flower, and parsley are kind of three of my favorites. They really help to tone and support the nervous system, while not necessarily sedating, but just calming and regulating. How are you finding your nervous system these days, Martin?
Well, I was thinking, you were thinking that, these are herbs and salts that can support you, but also, because Mercury's in Gemini, that makes all of that, that much more intense. And so what Mercury in Gemini is about gathering information. And so that's a very, so in terms of a practice that can help you sort out all the information and activate your Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the opposite sign. Gemini seeks information at all costs. Sagittarius wants to turn that information into wisdom. And so through giving a voice to the trickster, doing some very, very good time to write and journal and set intention, and do some reflection. That's our reading for you.
Yeah.
You got anything to add?
Well, I was just gonna say, with Gemini and reflection and gathering information, I think a lot of how, like, this time of year, that's exactly what nature's doing. Everything's blossoming and blooming, and the insects are out, and they're all sharing information. And by the end of this information time, usually a lot of what I'm noticing and understanding more as I try to tune in more to the natural world is that they get an idea of what's to come. They get that actually next 6-month download, whether they're going to be able to start storing nuts early or later. Are they going to be able to get through the winter or not? Can they repopulate this year, or do they need to conserve their energy? And on the trees factor. And so I find that really neat, that this gathering of information and then accumulates, I should say, to the summer solstice, which is this time of knowing how to best use that information to support the next 6 months. So like nature, maybe we do like nature.
That was beautiful. So reflection, intention, manifestation. You guys be good to yourself. Thank you so much for your support, Dayana. That was awesome.
Martin, that was awesome.
We'll see you guys next time.
So much love.